Yes, we are on air now, and good morning to everybody watching us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, listening to us in Clubhouse as well. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us this morning, and to welcome also our first-time guest, Marco Machi, who I'm going to introduce very briefly and then allow him to talk about himself. Before we start, of course, I want to say again thank you to our sponsors. The first one of them, of course, you already know, that is Kanchu, or as they are also known online, Kanchu.com. With Kanchu, you can do buying and selling real estate in Yokohama, real estate investment and property management. And in order to be able to do that, you need to connect with James Howell at Kanchu.com. James is our friend. He has been our friend for over 2 years, even before he came to Japan. He speaks Japanese and English. His colleagues are Japanese as well. So the language barrier will not be there at all. Please do not hesitate to connect with him on LinkedIn or write to him via email. And of course, now I want to say once again, welcome to Marco. Marco is head of business development and transformation services. He is based in the United States, but he's currently thinking about moving to Japan once he has how can I put it? I don't want to sound ageist. Once he gets to the point of retiring. When you grow up, yes. So thank you very much.
It doesn't make you grow up. I'm still a kid, so gotcha.
Right.
Anyway,
Okay.
by the way, real quick. James Howell,
Yes.
Kanchu, he came out to visit me on Saturday. We had lunch together. It was lovely. It was great to see him. He's such a good dude, man. I really like him and Hana, and he just came out to have lunch. And by the way, he came from Yokohama Station. He took the Shinkansen. It's only like 20 minutes from Yokohama to Tatami. Like, that's how close we are. So anyway, we had a lovely conversation. That guy is just what a great human being. He's a good dude. So anyway, I just wanted to put that little plug in for James the human being.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Tim. And now we're moving to Marco, the human being.
That's right.
Yes.
Marco's, look at him. You can all see him.
Yes. Yes. Now, thank you, Maya. Thank you, Maya and team, for having me on. Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I've been looking for avenues, channels to kind of get more engaged with Japanese communities, not only from the business side, which is obviously rich because of what I do every day, but also, more on a personal level. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to really bring my personal journey up forward and, share more where I am with basically my life here in the United States and, things that my wife and I are looking forward to in terms of, reconnecting with Japan. I lived in Japan for 5 years. And then I was there from 2013 to 2018, then came back to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am right now. What makes my journey a little bit hybrid or an outlier, I would say, is the fact that I'm originally from Italy. I was born and raised in Rome. So here I am with these three, slivers, dimensions of my journey here, having become a naturalized citizen some 12 years ago, but being obviously an Italian citizen, and then having moved to Japan. So I want to say the angle here, if you will, is the fact that anybody that asks me, why do you love Japan, and why you're thinking with your wife Yuko, why are you thinking of relocating or moving back to Japan and maybe retire in the future, is really unique. Is the fact that it's not because of what most people see about Japan as a country, as a society, but it's because of the way that Japan and my time in Japan reminded me of my Italian roots. I found many things in Japan with people, society, values, culture, tradition that really brought me back closer to what I experienced growing up in Italy. And then if the question becomes, how in the world can you draw a comparison between the social traits and culture and tradition in Italy with Japan? Well, that would be a longer conversation, and I'm afraid that this podcast would not suffice, would not cover. But this is really the
future podcast with you. We could tackle that in another one.
exactly. I would love to. So as I said, I am yes, I'm now 29 years living in the United States. North Carolina is really I want to say a little more green and rural state compared to others. It's a beautiful state, a lot of greenery, a lot of woods. We go back to visit my family sometimes, maybe on average once a year, and of course we do the same with my wife's family in Japan. So I'm really happy about again being here with you this morning, and I look forward to really get enriched, learn more, exchange thoughts, opinions on what brought people to really have the same desire that I have. What brought people to really develop um, that vision and plan to really move back to Japan and becoming a resident, either for career, marriage, life, any kind of journey that made that happen. And I would love to learn more. Um, I have a plan, I have a vision with my wife Yuko, but I think that there's so much enriching and really learning and listening. In general, I would say I value listening and learning greatly, because that's really the way we grow. And so I look forward to having a little bit of an exchange and really understand it from the other side's perspective of people that are there already. And thank you, Team and Maya, for actually being a great first feedback on your own experience, even though we just had one opportunity to talk. So, but I think
Right.
that you brought forward a lot of insight.
Yeah.
Well, I
Great.
cannot speak as somebody who has retired here yet, but I think I can talk as somebody who has been here for almost 24 years. And I have seen, let me say, I have seen an evolution of the opinion of foreigners who have been living in Japan. Because when I came, it was still very tough for foreigners to integrate in society. And I would often hear people actually complaining of how difficult it was to become a member, of a community here and so on, or to find a job and
Mhm.
be here. But then this gradually the situation has changed, and I can see that nowadays the prevailing opinion is that people want to be here. Foreigners want to be here. They want to live here.
It's
They
a
want to.
desirable place. It's become one.
Yes,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
become, yes, one. And it is a fascinating evolution to me, evolution of opinion to me, because, well, it was really difficult to get integrated. But then I believe that a lot of foreigners who now want to stay here, they have eventually realized that you do not have to be Japanese to be integrated into this society. And
Yeah.
yes, and of
And
course,
maybe it's a
Japan,
different flavor of integration, like because if you're going to go for full integration, that means it comes with all the baggage and all the burdens, and most people, if
yes.
Japanese is your second language, you're really
Hmm.
not equipped to withhold all these unspoken rules and responsibilities that society expects of you. And so as a foreigner, you come to appreciate that they're cutting you slack and they're still being very kind and inclusive. That's kind of how I did. But Maya, that sparked just a thought, because what you just said about there's been this evolution. So I came in 77. Think about it then.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to come to Japan. It was like the last place I wanted to go in the Navy, and they sent me here anyway. So I came here very reluctantly. And then the other situation, and this kind of illustrates the reality in exaggerated terms. I'm at Atsugi base. That's a bubble. You got everything on base you need. And I knew people who came here for a 2.5 year deployment and they never left the base except to go back to the airport. And they all told me and my buddy who came at the same time, the Japanese, they don't like foreigners. I mean, they didn't know what they were talking about, right? But they thought they did.
Mhm.
They believed it. They weren't lying, right? And there's, they don't want. There's no place out there. You got everything you need here. Like we were discouraged, and me and my buddy, we were rebels, and we're like, screw them. Look at all the pretty ladies. We want to meet them. We were young. I was 19, right? So we move off. 6 months later, we got a bunch of Japanese friends, but we were the tiny minority oddball foreigner that just jumped in and embraced Japan before it was cool. And
Yeah.
to speak to what you said, Maya, I think, anime and a lot of that has had that soft power, has had
Yeah.
a lot to do with winning the world over and
Right.
falling in love with Japan through their arts, you know what I mean? And their culture. Some of it's realistic and some of it isn't, but it still won them over. And so I completely agree with you, Maya. And I think today's younger generation absolutely loves Japan. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Marco. But that sparked an idea, what you said.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Tim, and thank you for bringing it up. I moved to Japan. I started traveling to Japan in 2006, 2007, sporadically because of business. So at that point, it was maybe 6, 7 times a year. So my experience really did not start right when I moved. But I can certainly relate to the fact that even back in 2006, the level of engagement, response, uh, social ecosystems, and engagement, if you will, with people was not what I found when I moved to Tokyo.
Mhm.
And I could certainly get a feel for what you said uh, in terms of this evolving trend or scenario where the country now is way more diverse, multicultural, if you can use that word, than it was probably, as you said, Tim, maybe 20, 25, 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
But I think to a certain extent, and maybe I want to say this goes back a little bit of what Maya and I were discussing before we came on. I think any country will give you a little bit of that experience. I moved to the United States in '96, and if you ask me how I see society and integration today, is just completely different from what it was and I experienced when I came here
Mhm.
30 years
Yeah.
ago. So I would say yes, I can relate a lot what you said. I can understand what you're saying earlier, Tim. And I also want to add, in terms of using the word integration, I want to venture to say maybe it's a stretch, and please correct me, educate me if you will. I wonder sometimes, do you even want to integrate in Japan?
No, I don't.
Right,
I don't want to be Japanese. I don't
right,
want
right,
to. And I love the Japanese, but I don't want to do that.
right.
It's
I mean,
too much.
I had a glimpse, and this is an interesting experience. The first time that I started getting a feel where, even in the business setting, going to a meeting with my team and being the only Westerner and the person that would be commercially in charge would really inject a different tone and rules of engagement in the room, because I was seen as a as who I was as a foreigner, obviously. But
Mhm.
that sooner rather than later became mirrored into the way that actually outside of work I would be perceived. So there's always filters and layers that you need to go through to expand, develop a network, relationships and things like that. So I completely agree. It's a journey, but I don't know that I would never want that. What I would ever want to integrate, even if that were possible. I don't know that I
I
would
don't.
want it. Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's part of the beauty of being a foreigner. And I trust that you both have walked through that path yourself at some point. So
Yeah, it's finding your sweet spot. Whoever,
Exactly.
everyone's got their own, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Uh, I mean, again,
So
it's
wait, what brought you to Japan? Like, what was your first step? Like, oh, Japan was on your radar. Like, what
right.
was
So I
the
think
moment?
that the moment that the path here was that even though I was a European professional living in the United States, I worked in the energy space for a global multinational firm, and I happened to have taken over the export business and predominantly in the APAC region. So Asia Pacific had been my area, my region of responsibility, and then 5, 6 years into this, it did not take me long to start carving out Japan as a country where I was really being attracted, intrigued by, and pulled into for both professional and also as a person. As I mentioned at the beginning, the culture. So what brought me to Japan is that after I want to say 6.5, 7 years of constant travel and the way that the business was being really scaled, then I ended up reassessing things with management, and my my leader said, "Hey, you seem to be doing well. You love it, and business wise, things are really scaling up. What prevents you from actually moving to Japan and avoid the logistics, the stress of going back and forth?" And then, as you know, both, in the business world, nothing happens without a reason that is probably driven by customers. So the bottom line was, as we saw business scaling, it became a necessity to really, make reorganizations, bringing people together in a certain way, bringing customer centricity, and so that kind of was a catalyst. So the answer, Tim, was business related,
Yeah,
and there was a decision whether to move to Korea, to Seoul, or Japan, and the decision was just to move and do things in Japan. So it was driven completely by the business side. And then what's fascinating to me is that once I opened that door and I really put myself in a situation to really spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years in Japan, it became a personal journey. More and more, I wouldn't say less of a professional, but it continued to be obviously a business commitment, but it became overwhelmingly a personal journey as a person. As I met my wife, I I developed a network, and I started growing my understanding of the country that is fascinatingly complex. So
yeah. And it's always funny when I almost forgot like how overwhelming Japan felt when I first got here.
right,
And to some people, I think it can be traumatizing because suddenly you're helpless, you're illiterate now. You look at all the signs, you can't read them, you don't know anything,
right,
and everyone's around you speaking a different language. And so suddenly you're thrown into this, in your mind, it's chaos because you
right.
just don't understand what's going on, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
But some people, if you're young, I was 19, it was an adventure now. So I'm just,
right,
okay, this is crazy, but okay, I'm going to try to have fun. But that's where it's almost like it wipes your slate clean in some ways because all your preconceptions have been wiped out
right,
about society and dynamics and how to deal with people.
Mm.
And then you kind of have to build it from scratch and adapt, right? And that's a
Yeah.
process we all go through. But
yeah,
Yeah.
now it's so second nature that I almost forgot about
right,
how tough it
Yes.
can be at the beginning. And if you don't have the right attitude and maybe you're a little mature in age
right.
and it's new, I think it's super hard maybe for some people to adapt.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I think. Yeah, go ahead, Maya.
Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, just now remembered, how, as you said, Tim, feeling illiterate here, suddenly, you're drawn. It was such a realization, and it was
Yeah.
traumatizing too.
It's
But also
traumatizing.
but for me, the illiteracy was not only in terms of languages. It wasn't just linguistic. It was also cultural
Cultural.
for me,
Yeah.
because all the assumptions I had, and they felt naturally, because I thought that, well, back home, because of our shared history, our shared religious values and beliefs and everything. So all those assumptions were universal, and they weren't. So I
Right.
came to Japan and I made assumptions. I made a
Yeah.
mistake after mistake. The language, once again, wasn't there. So it was traumatizing indeed. But now I have difficulty remembering specific instances when I really felt traumatized. And there were many, I know, because I suffered through the first 3 years of my staying in Japan. So it's fascinating how time heals everything.
Yeah, I remember mine was, and for whatever reason, we weren't going into Narita. This was '77, so maybe it wasn't open yet. So I flew into Haneda, and I took a bus from Haneda to Asugi Base. I remember the trauma of sitting on that bus, looking out the window, and not be able to read anything. It was
Yeah,
just so. But then again, I was young, and then a pretty lady would walk by. I go, oh, so like that kind of kept me positive, right?
yeah,
It just so orderly and safe, but still, I was.
I
yeah,
want to say, I
yeah,
want to say, what you just said, Tim. So in a in a different way, scaled back into the fact that I started traveling 2006, 2007. I do recall my very first time. My first flight from JFK to Narita, for two reasons. One, because obviously it was my first time flying into Japan. The second is because out of the 12, 13 hours flight, we got into a day where very severe turbulence, and I want to say probably 8 hours were really choppy. So I remember getting into Narita with a huge headache, and then, as if that was not enough, then the double whammy came when I got out of the arrival and went straight to the airport limousine counter, and I got into the bus to Shibuya, and the traffic on the highway and the constant pulling and braking of the bus. So I think that mentally I really deleted that memory because I came to the
Yeah,
hotel. If you
right.
ask me, I don't even remember the room. I mean, I do remember landing and going
yeah,
through customs and all that, but so yeah, having that scene, the getting in line for the airport limousine counter, getting outside and waiting for the three double layers road for the Shibuya bus, and
Yeah.
people, 500,000 people in the terminal is just was an experience that I will never forget. In addition to the dizziness.
Yeah, I also remember one thing, thinking about the houses. When I was looking at the houses, my very first impression, and that was once again the trip from Narita to Tokyo, and looking at the houses, and I thought, these houses look like doll houses. They're all made of wood. They're
I
all
thought
so
they were
tiny.
called rabbit hutches back then in the '80s because
Oh, really?
some
Well,
famous person said they all live in rabbit hutches. So Japanese used to laugh and tell me that my house is a rabbit hutch. I
I
that
didn't
memory.
know that. But because back home, all our houses are made of brick and stone, and they're,
Right.
heavily set you and very sturdy and this and that. We don't have had earthquakes, of course. But
Yeah.
seeing those wooden houses was such a shock to me. And I was like, how can people live permanently in a house like this?
Yeah.
So, wow, that
Yeah.
was such a revelation. Of course, nowadays I'm used to them. It's just part of the environment. You don't give them a second thought. But back
Right.
then, it was another shock
Yeah.
on
No,
the train.
I will say this: the comment on the wooden houses. You know, you probably saw most homes in the United States are a standard that really is closer to what you just described. Being from Italy, the notion, the concept of having a building that is really brick and concrete, obviously it's a de facto standard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, it can be that, but in most cases it's just foundations, but then you had tiles, wood, all
Right.
sorts of composites. So
Right.
I can certainly relate to that. Even though I
And
have to say,
their houses aren't traditionally weren't built well.
right.
It was like they were pretty weak. I live in an old house, but it's solid because my father-in-law's brother was a carpenter and he built it, and it's like a good structure, right?
So
But many
strong
Japanese homes
bones.
are not, and I think it's by design. Hey, we have all these earthquakes, we got to be able to rebuild quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah, and also I hear from friends and relatives who have houses here that the older houses, they were built so that they could catch the wind in summertime.
Yes.
Before there were electrical fans, before there were air conditioners, so that the winters here people were not so much afraid of the cold as they were of the summer heat and humidity. So the
no,
houses were built to catch every wind they could.
even when the windows are closed.
Yes, even when, yes.
In the winter, there were so many gaps in our house, the ones I used to live in. But let
Yes.
me ask you both a question. So we kind of talked a little bit about the shock of coming here, and maybe at the time things were traumatic. But what were some of the really positive human surprises, the pleasant surprises that you maybe didn't see coming when you came to Japan? Any thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I would say, going back a little bit of what I mentioned earlier, it's something that I did not really observe right at the beginning, Tim.
Yeah.
But the idea that coming from Italy, which is a country with thousands of years, 2+ thousands of years of history, the way that society has evolved, and as of today, Italy today is still very much based on traditional values.
Collectivism? Would you say it's much more
Collective wisdom. Yes.
America? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say, where family still means something. And, yes, tradition, if you will, right? History,
Yeah.
attention to history, reverence to, people, meaning of life, and valuing people and their journey. So I would say that a little bit of that, even though obviously without meaning to eulogize or glorifying any country, but I mean, I noticed that Japan had those social traits that I previously did not really consider.
Gotcha.
The second thing is, being from Italy, I have a culture of appreciation for food. And
I was going
that's
to mention that. Go ahead. Good. I'm glad you brought it up.
and
Passion. I would say the Italians and Japanese share this passion for their food,
right.
for all food. Yeah, yeah. I agree.
I would say the passion for food. I mean, I know that I'm probably oversimplifying or maybe trivializing it, but there's a difference between eating to live, or live to eat. And
Right. Yeah.
I'm here to say that the moment of really gathering around the table and enjoying quality food, and I want to stress quality food,
Right. Right.
what a country has to offer, in terms of vegetables, and all other form of
And it's the hub of family interaction. So it
right.
ties in with the family, pulling people together as well,
Exactly.
right?
I mean, I think that was a journey that of really discovery,
Yeah.
and then yes, the way that my own experience as an Italian citizen growing up in Italy in the 80s, in the late 70s and 80s, and mid 90s, saw in a country like Japan, and how all that mixed really pulled itself into a comfort zone that I never really considered. I want to share a funny fact here. When I actually arrived, and the first, it was around October, November, approaching the holidays, the Christmas holidays. So Christmas is not really a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. It's still not a big deal unless it's really on the commercial side, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so I knew that we were going to have a shutdown for a few days. So here I am walking in Minato-ku, central Tokyo, exploring, and I ended up noticing an Italian restaurant, and I actually went in. I wanted to really see, and the outside was really, made it intriguing for me to go in and see what they were serving, what was going on. And to your point, Tim, I saw a big table with a family, with like a large family from really, Oba-chan, Oji-chan, and the sons and the
Yeah.
nephews. And so I went to the owner, says, "Is there a little table?" Says, "Sorry, sir, we're full. There's a family." And he proceeded to tell me that actually the restaurant was closed. That they were having that
Is this a
that event.
Japanese family?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Oh,
yeah. So I said, "Okay, that's fine, no problem." But the owner knew English, spoke English very well. I said, "Well, why don't you come back and see us?" So, yeah, sure. He gave me a card. And then when on my way back, on my way out of the restaurant, two gentlemen stood up and walked to me because they heard a conversation. And surprisingly, I would say shockingly to me, because I also, I'm not an introvert, but I really, I don't get to a point where I want to really impose myself. Well, lo and behold, they came to me and says, "Why don't you join us? We
Oh,
heard
that makes
that
me
that's
so
sweet.
happy
yeah,
to hear
why don't
that.
you
Oh,
why don't you join us? This is this is our family. We're two brothers and all that." And at that point, I completely checked out. I didn't know what to say. I try to express how grateful I was, and I was embarrassed. And But I ended up sitting at the table with these two families, and we started
so
talking.
sweet.
Yeah.
And This is a random act of kindness.
Yes.
It's probably one off. I completely agree that I was probably lucky to be there at the right time with the right people. But to me, that remains hatched in memory because of the way that
But
I was.
I would bet dollars to donuts. If they were observing your behavior, they felt
Yeah,
something, your
could be,
humility, whatever, because I don't think they would have done that for
could
everyone.
could be, could
But
be.
I know Mike can vouch for this. I have been on the receiving end of many of those kindnesses.
Mhm.
Not always from strangers, but sometimes from acquaintances.
Right.
So that makes me, I don't hear enough of those, but they do happen, right?
Yeah, they do. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I
Yeah.
just a quick comment about Italian culture. This is something I've thought about. And Maya and I, we have some friends we met through LinkedIn, and we actually met them in person, Flavia and Julia. They're both
Yes.
Italian. And I have some other, I've had Italian friends and colleagues in the past.
Okay.
And one of the things you mentioned, food, passion for food. I completely agree with you. But there's also this love of beauty in
Hmm.
both cultures, and
Hmm.
Yes.
everybody looks at Italy. It's like, oh, they got style, man.
Yeah. Yes.
They make the best suits, and their cars mechanically might be
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
They look the coolest, man. You know, and you need a German engineer and Italian designer. That kind of those stereotypes, right? But
Yes.
so art and beauty and food. I think there's this strong appreciation,
Hmm. Yeah.
but then there's a little bit. The difference is all the Italian people I know are very warm people. They're huggers, and I
Yes.
come from a hugging family.
Right.
And of course, as you know, the Japanese are more a little more
That's
standoffish, although they
it's
can
yes.
spirit if they are put in that situation. And I think they kind of secretly enjoy the hugging. They won't admit it, but most of them, right? So
Yeah.
I think there are differences, but I agree with you. I see that similarity, and I think the thread is the collectivism, kind of.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And that's not to say there's differences in the way that people relate to each other, body language and culture and all that. And thank goodness for that, right? Because obviously
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
country has its own traits. So the way people relate to each other, distance, the time that it takes to really create trust.
Yeah.
um, I've seen, I want to say, a big catalyst that I knew already by the time that I moved to Tokyo was in the work environment, being able to come in as a foreigner, not known, and having to earn the trust of the organization that you would do the right thing, that you would actually do what you say that you would do, without really leaving gray area or unturned stones in terms of really taking efforts. And that really, earlier in my experience and my exposure to Japan when I was traveling periodically, became very, very evident. And I think that goes also to say the level of commitment, that I saw in the business, then turned that into maybe kindness and a level of commitment, outside of work. Just simply the fact that I started working with a team of people that did not know me, but as the corporation began really interfacing and working together with the global offices, when they started seeing me facilitating engagement with other people that they were seeking support from, and seeing Marco pulling people from the other side of the world, helping, then they were opening up, and they were really increasing their trust. And
Right.
the fact that I would do what I said that I would do.
You kept your promises.
Huh?
That's you kept your promises. That's
Yes.
morality here. It's
Yeah.
it's very Confucian, the gentleman and gentlewoman, they keep their promises. So
Exactly.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I think one of the biggest underrated things, and Maya and I, we've actually put together a seminar that really focused on this. The soft side of things are so underrated by people, like the importance of building these relationships and as human beings. And you mentioned the trust, like that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And there are ways to shortcut the process. Okay.
Yeah.
In my case, I had to bring a group over to America, and they had to trust me. But they I had 6 months to build that trust, and then they hired me, but they had to trust me. So I was in kind of a unique situation. They had no choice but to trust me. But then I had to, fulfill that image that I was worthy of their trust, right?
Right.
But the other thing is, again, socializing.
Right.
But it's also, I call it kikubari, the Japanese, proactive kindnesses. A really quick way to shortcut that process. Everybody should try it. If you meet a Japanese person or you're working with them, keep your radar open to finding things that you can do for them proactively to help them, or just a kindness. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It can be, buying them a cup of coffee. It could be a lot of things, right? But that proactiveness of doing kindnesses, they will feel compelled to return the kindness. And that means you're starting that relationship, the reciprocal obligations of all relationships, right?
Okay.
I found that, like, especially effective. And in America, I could help them all because they weren't bilingual. I was, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
and that allows you to grease the skids behind the scenes with decision making and things. And so it gives you more influence in the process.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Right. Okay, so please allow me to interject here. Well,
wow, I can't. I thought I set my alarm. It didn't go off. Okay, sorry about that.
okay. No, always good. So I want to say thank you to our other sponsor, Houze, or as they are also known, Houze Inc. You can find them online at houze.co.jp or at webmaster@houze.co.jp. You can talk there with Hana Urushizawa Howell, and she can talk with you once again, either in English or in Japanese. So Houze does custom home design and construction. They do commercial building construction as well. They're also based in Yokohama. So if you have any ideas or projects coming up your way in these fields, please do not hesitate to reach out to Hana on LinkedIn, or to just email the company and talk with them about what you want to do, what your needs are. They will customize their services to meet your needs to the highest possible level. So thank you very much for this. And now we are back again to Marco and Tim and me. Yes. No, that's okay. Thank you very much for this, for allowing me to do this.
Sure.
Yes, but yeah, Marco, I know that you were going to say something, or
Yeah.
did I misread you?
No, thank you, Maya, I'm glad that we had this little break for the sponsor. I would say there's so much that I saw in Tim's references earlier in terms of being kind and always helping or showing that you're there really to help and to earn their trust, and being trustworthy or worthy their trust. I want to say it's true across the board, especially when you're not in a work environment. In the work environment, that plays out very well as well.
Yeah.
But the only area that I found myself having to deal with in terms of how I was really reaching out to earn that trust and also be sensitive to the needs of people had to kind of collide, or maybe collide is a little bit of a strong word, but had to deal with uh, the human resources side of the organizations. And I will share an interesting story. So 2 3 years in, I want to say probably 2 years into my time in Japan, because of the nature of the business, we ended up staying in the office until probably 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. And
Mhm.
because of the time difference, we needed to really meet a certain deadline to really provide tenders to our customers, and we needed to really be on the phone with companies in Germany and all things like that. So one time in particular, I went downstairs, took a taxi, and went home. And then the next day, I came back to the office, and I happened to notice that two of my team members were actually wearing the same exact uh, clothes that they were wearing the day before.
Mhm.
So, being curious as I am, and being connecting dots as I do, fortunately or unfortunately, I called them in my office one by one, and I said, "Hey, I noticed that you wear the same thing as yesterday. Can I ask you, you didn't go home?" He said, "Well, Machi-san, sorry, it was too late. I'm too far from home. So I took I actually used the emergency room for Jishin, for earthquake, and I slept, in the office." And lo and behold, I approached the second team member, and he told me the same. So I said, "Listen, health and safety are really very important. I don't mind how far you are from your home. Next time that we really, burn the midnight oil and beyond, do me a favor. You go home, you take the time, whatever it takes, you go home, and you can come to work the next day in the afternoon. You take it just the morning off." And they looked at me as if I had three heads.
Yeah.
Uh, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Machis, yes, Machi-san, you don't know. I mean, we will get fired. I said, "You will not get fired. Just do it. Don't worry." And then 2 weeks came by, and then we had to deal with the same schedule issues again. And here I am, being in the office of the country HR manager, and basically, talking to him and says, Machi-san, we, in Japan, we don't do these kind of things.
Right. Just the peer
Yeah.
pressure alone makes
Yeah,
it
yeah. So, and I
virtually
said,
impossible.
right. So
Being
I
a
had to
warrior and showing
exactly
everybody that you have that fighting
Yeah.
spirit
right.
is so
And
important
I had
in
to.
that
I
business.
found myself in this situation where I had to empathize with the policies, but I had to also stress how the empathy level towards people was,
Yeah.
something that and that was, I have to say, that was a game changer because of the way that
Mm.
I was, having their back, if you will.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that story. We have a comment on LinkedIn from Mark Kennedy.
Okay.
And
Someone
Mark,
you know.
yes, omatase shimashita. Sorry for this,
Sorry about
keeping
that,
you
Mark.
waiting. Yes.
No.
So Mark writes, Marco, first of all, thank you for sharing your personal perspective. And is your plan to retire completely or to be semi-retired for a while?
Yes. So, Mark, thank you for bringing this up. And the latter is very much the case. Meaning, um, it's just the way that we are as people, as professional. There's such a vision and a desire from my side to really bridge everything, every ounce, every piece of experience that I've had, and really bring value to people. So my vision right now is really to continue to stay engaged in the industry, and but to clearly bridge the experience, the knowledge that I developed in my years in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and continue to to put my services, my time at the benefit of customers. So very much looking forward to continuing this journey, to operate, to continue to work in whatever fashion and model I will find beneficial for myself and for clients, for customers. And I would say I appreciate Mark's question very much, because I've been dealing with an industry that is the energy industry that has been evolving,
Mm-hmm.
and Japan is really on a path of, I believe, in of awakening, transformation, and I can see how my role, my time, my experience would be a benefit to customers. So I'm very much looking forward to continue to work.
Right. So, and do you intend, oh, well, I believe that you are still considering coming to Japan once you semi-retire.
Absolutely.
But yes, so you still intend to do the same thing after you come to Japan, if you decide, you and your wife decide to settle here.
Yes, yeah. The idea is to basically carry on with the steps and the milestones of my career, but I really look forward to a point where, even though it won't be seamless, but I mean to develop that path, and to move to Japan, and to do it in a way that I will have harvested and developed visibility, network,
Mm-hmm.
customer base at that point. I'm One thing about me that is less obvious because of the media and the way that we're now discussing is I love challenges. I love constant change. I love a path of evolving, learning new things. So I would only look at it as an intriguing path of change and
Mm-hmm.
evolution, to be able to move back to Japan, which is a country that I dearly miss, with my wife, and to really create a profession that would provide value to customers in the industry. But I mentioned that I love food, so maybe uh, do something that it would be a parallel to the career path that I have. But I very much look forward to really not just a retirement plan or phase of my life, but an
Right.
opening door to continue to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, food is always a good segue into that, because I've never met a Japanese person who doesn't love Italian food. I mean, they all love it. And
Yeah.
kind of a fun fact:
Right.
the first two Italian people I met after I came back to Japan, maybe 4 years ago, is when I met them. Um, their name is the one runs a restaurant, and I think the other one has something to do with the food industry. But the restaurant owner, his name is Mario, and the other guy's named Luigi. And I'm thinking, like, how stereotypical could that be with an
Can't get more
Italian?
Italian than that.
Yeah, yeah, and of course who's the Luigi guy in the game, so everybody knows those two names.
Right.
Yeah, food is always the way to go, and I
I,
mean,
I
Yeah.
will
I
say
feel
I
this
will say
affection
this.
towards Italians
I
here.
agree. There's always been a level of standard appreciation of towards Italian food, the palate, and
Yeah,
the way that
Mm-hmm.
Japanese indulge and appreciate quality food that
yeah,
really intrigue me. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it is a far cry from what I see here, for example. And
oh
without
yeah,
being,
for sure.
without, right, without
I
being,
agree with you. I agree
right.
with you.
So, I've been
America's convenience and volume. That's
right,
kind of,
exactly, right. The all you can eat, right,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and I think that in my five
Process.
years, and Yuko also, is not here, but she would attest to that. We we realized that it's really very difficult to get a bad Italian meal or international meal in Japan. You really had
Oh,
to do something, being in the wrong time at the wrong place. But I think that um, we have enjoyed the quality of Italian food or other
yeah.
food, for that matter, tremendously. And I love the fact that the level of standard expectation is very high.
Yeah, and ingredients are so important here. Like quality of raw material
Absolutely.
ingredients, right?
Yes,
So
yes. Which is really what I was telling earlier, like
yeah,
the
exactly.
link to what I've experienced growing up in Italy. The quality of the food, the ingredients, the cooking, the procedure, the recipes, the attention to details. This is really something that is something that I became passionate about. So yeah, food completely. But
Nice.
sometimes we discuss this with
Wow,
my. I was going to
it's
say
always
we
nice. Well, we hope you can make it here soon. And do
yes.
you plan to visit um, in the near future,
Yeah, so
Japan for now?
we're looking at probably
Oh,
late spring. I want to say early
can't hear
summer.
you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say yes. We're planning to be in Japan maybe very late spring, or maybe early midsummer. So for family event, for family
Good, good.
reason, and I look forward to it. I love to.
Tokyo, Tokyo.
So no, we'll make a stop in Tokyo hopefully, but so family is down south in near Fukuoka, so we'll be
Oh,
there.
nice, nice
Yeah,
area.
and yeah, so I look forward to that. The 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 only negative there is when we come to Japan, there's always a very busy agenda between things that my wife and I do,
Yeah,
meeting family, doing things for
sure.
documentation things. So,
Yeah,
but we look forward to
right.
being there. And jokingly enough, sometimes it's more fun for me than is it for my wife because being Japanese, humors me
Yeah,
sometimes. Like, well, you're just like a kid in a candy store. You
yeah,
like to go to Japan and all that, but for me, I'm more isogashi.
yeah.
So,
I
Right.
get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah,
yeah.
makes
So yep. But I look forward to coming back, and
nice,
I,
nice.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to actually have these conversations, and maybe next time that I'm in Tokyo, maybe organize, maybe have an opportunity to meet in person if that's
Yeah.
feasible.
That
Nice.
that will be great, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So I just got a message from Mark again, and Mark, thank you very much for letting me know that the broadcast on LinkedIn is not very smooth. And
Oh,
to everybody watching us, I will share also the link to the YouTube stream. YouTube is usually without any glitches. And sometimes with LinkedIn, I just cannot do anything there because that's the live stream and that's how it goes. So
it's been
apologies.
so wonky on LinkedIn
Yes.
lately.
So
Just
I apologize to everybody who has watched on LinkedIn. So I will share the link to YouTube. And please, if you have time, just watch the podcast there on YouTube.
yeah.
Yes. So, and yes, well, I'm sitting here in front of the window and it is snowing in Tokyo right
Oh,
now. Yes.
Wow.
So,
Wait a
right.
minute. It's
incredible.
not snowing here. The sun's out. Hold on. What's the
Incredible.
temperature there? Jeez.
Well, I think it's about 7 degrees right now here.
Yeah, it's about 8 degrees here. It's always a little warmer
So
here.
the weather here in North Carolina has been very, just crazy. In the last 2 weeks, we went from snow 3 weeks ago to
Oh,
like 19 degrees, 10, 20 degrees last weekend, now back into the teens. So this winter has been really unique in a way. And well, I would say the last 2 years, but we look forward to the spring, to the warm weather. That's for sure. I myself enjoy the four seasons. But as much as I love Sapporo, Hokkaido, Hakodate, uh,
Yeah.
I would say I'm not exactly built for the cold weather. But
Me either. That's why I
yes,
left
Well,
Chicago. Yeah.
that
that's right.
makes three of us. Yes.
Yes, I,
Yeah.
I
Well, just
remember.
as a weather update, Atami, it's 8 degrees and it's going to rain in 45 minutes. So we're not getting snow, but it'll be very unpleasant. It was so nice too.
I'm sorry for that. I hope. Well, this morning I saw the weather forecast. It said that it would rain in Tokyo, and then the afternoon would be clear. And well, now we have snow.
So it's
That's
cold enough to snow. It doesn't have to be like
right.
1 to 2 degrees was the
I,
snow.
I will. I will mention the weather. In the winter, I went from leaving the station. I think it was Shinagawa, getting on actually in Tokyo Station, getting on the Sobu line, going towards Narita,
Yeah.
and seeing like sun in like right earlier, like at the beginning, around like Funabashi, Tsudanuma, and then getting closer to Narita, and then got gloomier, darker, overcast, and then getting into Narita was snowing. So
Right.
I've been through situations where weather was, and it's not that far apart, but it's like an hour journey. But
Yeah, but
weather.
still, the weather changes a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think Japan's weather, I lived in Tennessee for 5 years.
Okay.
It was very similar to Tennessee, like once a year, maybe a little dusting of snow, and everybody freaks out and they close the schools down. In Chicago, it had to be like a foot of snow before they would close the, yeah.
Tim, may I make just one remark here that yes, that's true what you say, but I would say it's true for mostly for Kanto and the areas, south of, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Tokyo.
yes, because if you go north, then
Hokkaido,
inevitably, yeah,
they're used to it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
also Tohoku, in Tohoku you get a lot of snow as well,
Right.
and Ichikawa and and so on. So yes, I think that Japan is really wonderful because you get all these variations in
You
climate.
do. You do.
Yes, and
True.
yes, and definitely Shizuoka and Kanto are really nice, especially for people who are not good at cold weather.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
I had to laugh though the first time. So the first time it snowed where there was like slush on the road, and there were people in my neighborhood. This is in Japan. They were putting chains on their tires. Now the Kanto's all flat, right? Where I'm from, nobody puts chains unless you're on a mountain, going up or down a mountain, and it's
Right.
Right.
really snowy, right? So I just remember hearing these chains going whap, 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 going down the street. And I'm like, wow, he's got chains on his tires just for this. So the standards are different, at least
Right.
where I was in Tokyo. But
Yes.
anyway,
Yes. Yes.
look at us old folks talking about. You're
I,
not old.
but I relate to,
Hot weather, just like Japan, just like the Japanese.
I relate to what you said, both of you earlier. Even here in Raleigh, in North Carolina, the weather is very mild. All
Yeah,
it takes is to have flurries and maybe
yeah,
like,
right.
3 millimeters of snow. Then they go live on TV and they announce the schools shut down
Right.
for the day, because of the safety concerns. So and I spent what 3 years in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and that would make people laugh.
Right,
Right.
exactly. That's so funny.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
hey,
Great.
I like this mild weather. I really do.
Right. Right. Yeah. Or at least being able to go for the full seasons and the four seasons, the
Yes.
change of the season
Yeah.
is something that I'm used to, because of the Mediterranean climate that I grew up with.
Right.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier the cold weather. I would enjoy in the summer. I would actually take trips to Hakodate,
Hmm.
Onuma Park, because it was beautiful, fresh. It would give me a break from the heat of Tokyo.
Impressive.
And then I spent time in Sapporo in the winter for the ice festival. And I had my admirations and respect for people being able to adapt and live in such a cold weather.
Yeah.
But Sapporo itself is beautiful. So
Yeah.
uh,
Well, Marco, we would love to have you back on in the future. And, I enjoyed the
likewise.
Yes.
conversation. I know
Yes.
it's time for our sponsors, and we're at 9 o'clock. People listening, thank you for listening. I know you got to get to work. Some of you are on the train. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time. And Maya, I'll throw it
Thank
over
you
to you.
both.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, Mark.
thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you both.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
once again, before yes, we let you go, we have this big thank you again. This time with a little bit of joy or a joyful melody
Get
to
rid
say
of it.
yes to our to our sponsor. Here we go.